afternoon, everybody. All right. The sun's out. Let's hear it. All right. Well, I'm Jeff Molnar, for those of you that don't know me, the mayor in Bemus Point, and we are so very pleased to be able to do this. I have a little prepared speech that I'll give at home plate, but this is going to be just the short version. We'll get on to the real meat and potatoes here. Everybody knows Tom Brown?
No. Brownie!
This other distinguished-looking gentleman is Chris Blakeslee from the Post-Journal. So I'm just going to turn the mic over to these guys, and let's have a great time and see some great baseball tonight.
Well, welcome to sunny Dietrich Park. The weather is always bright here in Western New York. I'm sitting here with Mr. Brown, who is the son of Walt Brown, famous Major League Baseball player right out of Bemus Point. Let's start off with a few basic, simple questions. What was it like growing up as a son of a Major League Baseball player?
Well, I really never really thought about the whole thing as a, the time I was born, my dad quit playing baseball. That was 1954. So it was just, I know my dad obviously loved the Baltimore Orioles because the Browns became the Baltimore Orioles in 54. And it was just one of these things that, I was just, dad was dad. We just did, the simple things. He was just, I just remember I had three older brothers. Two of them got to play, a lot of you don't know, but Bemus Point back in the day in the late 50s, 60s had a county team, and my dad was the manager and coach. So my brother Barry and Tim, at that time, with a few of the Woodfields and the Roger boys, they formed a team. So I remember going to these, to those games. So, but you got to remember, late 50s, I was only a 4 or 5 year old kid. So, I just remember just getting in the car, going and watching it. So, I mean, it was just, I guess, really part of my DNA, just being, playing. So, as a kid. But, my dad was, a great man, and he was a very gentle guy. He'd give the shirt off his back, and there's a lot of people in the audience today that spent a lot of time at the Brown residence in their heyday growing up.
Wow, what a history. This brings up something else too. I was reading and I was doing a little background research on this event because this is so historic. But I understand your dad was also quite the ladies' man. And he...
Just like Tom.
And just like he played ball, passionate and very, driven, he was pretty driven to meet your mom, too. Can you tell us about how your dad and your mom met in the courtship?
All right. Well, my dad was an avid basketball player for Bemus Point High. And what he did, they would play Mayville and the close-knit teams. Obviously, they were traveling, probably by trolley back and forth around. And but my mother grew up in Mayville, and she was a cheerleader for the Mayville basketball squad there. Well, I guess at a game, all it took, I guess, was eye contact with my dad and my mother, and they wanted to, get to know each other a little better, and they started courting. So what's really crazy is, as you know, on Center Street, one of the houses is the old trolley depot, and my dad would regularly ride that to Mayville in their day of courting. But really what's crazy, if the weather got too bad, my dad grew up on Brown Road, which is named after my family, and he'd come down, put his racer skates on down in Bemus Bay. He would skate to Mayville from Bemus, when he was courting my mother. So I guess if that wasn't true love, I don't know what really was.
You hear that, boys, gentlemen? Take some notes.
Take some notes. Write that down.
Mr. Brown has set the standard really high. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about his baseball career. From my understanding, he came up through the ranks and he's traveled all over the place in Texas. And I believe you have an interesting story when your mom and your dad first got married in Texas, and it revolved around a home plate and a car.
Okay, at that time, my mother had 2 sisters and a brother, and her family at that time, June 23rd, 1939, and there's a picture over here on the table with on their wedding day. My dad was playing with the Kilgore Boomers in Kilgore, Texas, and so whatever provoked them, the date, the whole deal, her family had to bring her down to Kilgore, and my mother, it was before a game, so as you can see in the picture, my dad has his uniform on. My mother was at first base, my dad at third base. They walked simultaneous together, met at home plate. They got married on home plate on June 23rd, 1939, and they in front of 3,500 people. And they had a box seat, the team, and what was really great, the team got together and bought them a brand new 1939 Buick Special for their wedding gift. So that was, that was quite a deal. So, yeah, and obviously he, sat in the box seat and watched the game, and so the rest was history.
It's really amazing. You sit here and we hear these stories of yesteryear, and you don't hear this stuff anymore happening in our generation and our world. So it's really a nice throwback to how things really were. Now, so your father's a pitcher, and he's in the AAAs, but then he went right from the AAAs, he got called up to the big leagues, right?
Correct.
In St. Louis. What are some of the people he pitched against that he would tell you stories of?
Well, in 1943, I believe he was called up to AAA. That was with the Toledo Mud Hens, and they were the farm team for the St. Louis Browns. 1944, the St. Louis Browns played at Sportsman's Park along with the Cardinals. So when one team was away, the other was home. That year, those 2 teams ended up in the World Series. So the World Series in 1944 never left St. Louis. So that was, quite a deal. And I know I still have a program. My dad was at a couple of those games to watch that World Series, and he gave me the actual, a folder or program, I should say, of that series. So it was pretty cool. The biggest thing is when my dad did get up, he got called up in 46 to play with 47 St. Louis Browns. His biggest thrill, he was a relief pitcher, and he worked really, really hard to achieve that, coming up through the ranks, A, AA, AAA. One of his major big thrills in his career, they played, obviously the Yankees were in their league, and in the American League, and he beat the Yankees. Casey Stengel was the manager, so that was one thing he always talked about that he took a lot of pride in. Because I'm sorry if you're a Yankees fan, but I guess he didn't like the Yankees. The other, he played in ballparks, Cleveland, Detroit, Boston, Washington Senators. It was a few. So as it ended up, his other main thrill, Ted Williams, as we all know, was probably one of the greatest hitters of all time. My father faced him. He struck him out, but Ted Williams, my dad was noted, and he threw a lot of knuckleballs, and he was a very good knuckleball pitcher. Well, Ted Williams got a hold of one, and my dad says, just got up in the wind. The wind took it out. So
Blame it on the wind.
But that, but as you know, I mean, Ted was just a phenomenal hitter. But more so, as you know, Ted was a World War II hero for our country. He was a bomber in one of the B-25 bombers, and Ted ended up getting called back in the Korean War to do the same. So there's a scorecard over here. You can look. That's when they played the Yankees. You're looking at Ralph Houck, Joe DiMaggio. It's got their batting averages. Joe is batting cleanup. Phil Rizzuto. There's a few. Matter of fact, that was 47 was Yogi Berra's rookie year, but he's on that roster also. But it was even back then. They had the Negro League. They had many leagues to try to get to the big time, to the big league. It was a tough road. I mean, it's no different than it is today. But obviously, the money wasn't there. But that was his passion. He just loved baseball.
So you alluded to it a little bit earlier that your dad was a very humble guy, would give the shirt off his back, I believe you said. What do you think kept him so grounded, being from small town Bemus Point, and then coming back here, and it didn't sound like it never went to his head, that he was still always the same humble guy? And I imagine from stories I've been hearing, he would sign any autographs for kids and anything like kids at the ballpark, he would interact with them. He wasn't one of the type that would pull away or, notoriously crabby like Ty Cobb or. So what do you feel grounded your dad so well?
Well, bottom line, we all had to grow up somewhere, and Bemus Point was his hometown, and he just, it didn't matter, you look at the roster of the Browns, and you look at guys coming from St. Louis, Chicago, all over the country for that matter. And it gets to my dad. It would tell the player. They'd have a list of infielders, pitchers, and so forth. And you got the Walt Brown, and you look across, and his height, weight, he throws right, bats right, because he had the bat. And when it got right over to your hometown, it's right point blank, Bemus Point, New York. And he was just, I think part of the deal, I mean, when, playing almost 20 years of his life that he spent playing, maybe, I guess we could use burnout, but my dad did do, for the town of Ellery, they had a town of Ellery days, the Little League program back. This was probably, I want to say early 80s, and we had some small 3x5 postcards that he had signed, or a picture I should say, and he handed them out to the kids up there. And another nice thing the town has done too is down at the Ellery Town Park down in Greenhurst, they named one of the Little League fields after my dad. And there's a placard down there that's, just a picture and just a short itinerary. My dad, he's born in Bemus, 1915, graduated from Bemus Point High in 1933. His baseball coach at that time, he started playing varsity baseball when he was in the 7th grade. And they saw that, that Walt Brown had a talent to throw a baseball, and so they wrote a letter to the St. Louis organization. So my dad did get accepted for a tryout with the St. Louis. Actually, it was the St. Louis Cardinals. So one of his first venues was with the Columbus Redbirds, which was in the St. Louis organization.
So you were talking a little bit about your dad and his pitching style and some of the people he pitched against and beat. I mean, they were Bush League, so it wasn't anything big, but just joking. You mentioned that he was a knuckleballer, and we don't see too many knuckleballers. I believe the last knuckleballer that came through MLB would have been R.A. Dickey. out of Buffalo Bisons and went into Toronto Blue Jays. Did he ever talk to you about trying to maintain control of the ball? Because knuckleballs are notoriously, they're wiry, they go out of control. R.A. Dickey's catcher had to have a special mitt made just because the knuckleball was all over the place. Did he ever talk to you about being a knuckleballer or throwing the knuckleball?
Yeah, I tried to do it. My dad had very big hands, and he could throw a knuckleball with 3 fingers and use his thumb and his little finger as the guide. I tried to throw it in high school, and I had to only use 2 fingers, and it was actually like an off-speed pitch because it was tough to throw just to get any speed. And the key to that, you get to the ballpark, you're looking for a flag. You're saying if you're going to throw into the wind, the knuckleball is going to work. I mean, that's when it's most effective. Whether you're pitching baseball or softball. So, but no, he worked with me a little bit. I'll mention, my oldest brother Barry. He served in the U.S. Air Force. He played on the baseball team. Barry was a very good player. Tim was a year behind him. Tim played, on the high school team. Tim was a very good, player. My brother Brian, who's 9 years older than I am, his boys are here today. They, Brian, I guess if he would have been my height, I think he had like 3 no-hitters and a couple one-hitters his senior year in high school. So Brian was a very talented pitcher also, and he served in the Air Force. So
I'm noticing a common trend with everything you're talking to us about. Baseball in the military seems to run deep within your family. Is that always been, or is it just with your father's generation?
Well, obviously it started with, my dad. He served 2 years in the U.S. Navy. And, as all those ball players in the day and, during World War II, they had to go fight. And that was baseball took a back seat. So that's just how it was. But they all came back and they were doing something they all loved.
All right, I think at this time would be an appropriate time to open up this for audience questions. We'll do a Q&A. Can I have Mr. Molnar come on up here?
Some of these pitchers that they were just basically out of high school, whatever. So they'd be at wherever playing, and my dad would notice that pitcher was having a lot of trouble, throwing strikes, walking batters. So my dad would just, okay, I guess I'm going to go in and pitch. So the opposition's looking over there, and they go, look at that, they're going to put the old man in. Well, little did they know that the old man pitched in the majors, So Mike Rogers was the catcher at that time, and Mike used to my dad threw such a heavy ball, and if you ever see Mike, ask him, he can tell it better than I, but he used to put a glove that you would put in the winter inside the catcher's glove, and he would pull that glove off at the end of catching my dad, whether it's 3 innings, 2 innings, whatever. And he would look at his hand, it was like raw beefsteak. Because, my dad threw a very heavy ball. And it was just, and yeah, they quit saying the old man, like right now. My dad played, we had 2 Hammond organs. My dad, after he got done playing, his coaching with the teams, he was a true outdoorsman. He loved hunting and fishing. And my dad ended up working for the New York State Conservation Department at the Chautauqua Fish Hatchery. That's where he, ended up working. But my dad, and Dave Lipsey's in the audience, he can attest. My dad, at the time in Dave's era, my older brother's era, they would close the surf club in the Caesar House at 1 o'clock. And they all would say, well, we're going to Walt Brown's, we're going to have a sing-along. And my dad could read some music, but he played that organ by ear. But they would all come down, our 300-foot lawn would look like a used car lot. And at about 4:30 in the morning, I'd hear the floor shake in the windows. I'd be up in my bedroom. And remind you, I'm only like, 10-year-old kid. And I go,
I look out and it's first light. I go, oh, it looks like a used car. Oh, they're just down having a sing-along. They're all right. But my dad, and it didn't bother my mother. I think at that time where they felt, my parents felt that they're just here having a good time. They're not driving. They're not on the road. And my dad and mom just took everybody in. And there'd be people sleeping out in the front yard, out on the sun porch. You know, so it was just, it was a great time. You know, I think Bemus Point was a great place to grow up. I mean, we all had to grow up somewhere, but it really was. I told my children as they were growing up, we went to see my mom and dad when they still owned our house, that, you know, welcome to my playground. I mean, we had the golf course was right there. We went swimming in the lake, the creek. It was so, you know, you could go out and golf 29 or 27 holes of golf by 11 o'clock. All right, what do you want to do now? We go play basketball, baseball, football. It was a great place, and I know a lot of the kids, the grandchildren can attest to that.
My grandfather had a tendency of falling asleep quite a bit. He would fall asleep at the wheel of the car when my mom was with him, or cutting cheese. Well, I guess one night he was playing the organ out in the living room, and according to my grandmother, all she heard was one loud key, just. So he went out there, he had fallen asleep on the keys. So my dad told me that he went up there the next day to go fishing or whatever he was doing, and he was talking to him, and he had a cut on the bridge of his nose. And my dad said, "What'd you do to your nose?" "I fall asleep on the goddamn organ. I know." That was one of the stories that my dad told me. I thought it was pretty funny. But Tom can attest that he did snooze quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of you know he enjoyed smoking the pipe. That was you know, his pastime too. Well, as a 10, 11-year-old kid, we're going down by Cheney's Farm down the old road, and I'd be sitting in the middle between him and my mother, and he'd say, "Tom, grab the wheel." You know, we're doing 55 mile an hour, and you know, big Oldsmobile, you know. So he goes, "I gotta light my pipe." So next thing you know, his hands come off the wheel. I reach over and I'm driving the car. He's operating the gas, and but you know, Dad was Dad. You know, that's pretty much how it was. And some of you, another great thing about my dad, we had a basement, which in the summertime on a hot, muggy day like today, we'd have various range of beverages in the basement. So he would you know, invite people down and have a nice cold beverage and reminisce and so forth. So. Yeah, we had a flowing well, and of all the years that when I grew up, I never saw that dry up. It just, he had a live bait down there, he kept, you know, fish down there. And,
The tin cup.
And
tin cup was
when he would go fishing, he would live bait. So I remember going on excursions out, catching, you know, the chubs and so forth. And he'd keep him down there in that live well.
I feel like we've been talking about him as a pitcher. How was he as a hitter?
Well, actually, he was a pretty good hitter, you know, because obviously they didn't have DH back then, so, you know, if you're in the game, you're hitting. So, but yeah, I never really knew what his average was. I know my younger sister, did some research as far as pitching, as far as his ERA through the years, and it really is something. I mean, compared to what relief pitchers now and what they make and what their ERA is, my dad's was compatible or better than what theirs are. So he was a great athlete, really was. This whole thing together, kudos to you. Thanks Randy Anderson and Craig Peterson for your assistance to make this all happen. So it's really nice to remember my dad.
Hey, Trinity. very gratifying to see all of you Browns here. It really is. I mean,
It's